Before I begin, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share isn't just another story from the police files. This is about the moment I realized that some truths can't be found in training manuals or procedure books. This is about coming home and discovering that home had been waiting with secrets I never imagined. My name is Daniel Yazzie, and 8 weeks ago I made a choice that forever altered my understanding of reality. I traded my position with the Phoenix Police Department for a badge with the Navajo Nation Police in Chinle, Arizona. The journey from Phoenix to Chinle stretches approximately 5.5 hours through changing landscapes. I stopped 4 times during that drive, not from necessity but from hesitation. Each passing mile carried me deeper into reservation territory, closer to relatives I hadn't faced in nearly a decade, closer to a past I'd spent those years trying to leave behind. The terrain transformed as I traveled northward. City sprawl dissolved into raw desert, then evolved into magnificent red rock formations, rising like ancient sentinels from the earth. When I finally crossed into Navajo Nation territory, the sky possessed that distinctive quality of boundless azure that exists only in high desert elevations. No commercial signs, no shopping centers, just land extending toward infinity. The Chinle Police Department occupied a crossroads where Highway 191 intersected with a dirt path leading toward remote backcountry. The structure was a practical modular building with several patrol vehicles parked outside and a flag positioned at half-staff. I arrived at 7:30 in the morning, 30 minutes before my scheduled start time. A woman stood beside one of the patrol trucks, inspecting equipment. She appeared to be in her mid-40s, with dark hair secured in a tight bun and a face weathered by years under the desert sun. Her uniform was impeccable, her badge gleaming. She observed me as I stepped from my vehicle. "You must be Yazzie. I'm Captain Sarah Benali." "Yes, ma'am." "Daniel Yazzie, reporting for duty." Her handshake was firm, her gaze assessing. "Phoenix PD for 6 years. Strong record, consistently positive evaluations. Then you request transfer to tribal police, accepting reduced compensation and relocating to one of the most isolated districts on the reservation." She tilted her head slightly. "Why?" I had rehearsed an answer to this inevitable question. Something about serving my community, about returning to my roots, about connecting with my heritage. All of it contained truth, but none of it was the complete truth. "My cousin died here 3 months ago," I stated instead. "Vehicle incident on Highway 191 near Mexican Hat. Single vehicle collision. He was returning from an extended work shift." Captain Benali's expression softened marginally. "Raymond Begay. I remember the case. I'm sorry for your loss." The investigating officer's report indicated he swerved to avoid something on the roadway, but the report didn't specify what, just listed as unidentified animal. I met her eyes directly. "I want to understand what happened to my cousin, and I want to prevent it from happening to others." She studied me for an extended moment, then nodded. "Come inside. We need to discuss some things before your shift begins." The station interior was functional and sparse. A small bullpen with 4 desks, a break room, Captain Benali's office, and a holding cell that appeared rarely used. Various maps of the district covered the walls along with patrol schedules, and something immediately captured my attention. A framed document, aged and yellowed with handwritten text. It appeared to have been photocopied and reframed multiple times over decades. Navajo Nation Police, Chinle District Protocols. These protocols have been transmitted through 4 generations of tribal police. They are not mere suggestions. They are not superstitions. They are survival instructions derived from experiences that cannot be explained through conventional law enforcement training. Protocol 1. Never investigate reports of unusual activity alone after darkness falls. Always request backup and wait, regardless of how long it takes. Protocol 2. If you pursue someone and they transition from bipedal to quadrupedal movement, cease pursuit immediately and return to your vehicle. Protocol 3. Jewelry or ceremonial items discovered on roadways must never be touched. Mark the location and contact medicine man Harold Sosi immediately. Protocol 4. Do not enter any hogan with its doorway facing north. This violates traditional construction principles and indicates something fundamentally wrong. Protocol 5. If you hear coyote vocalizations from 3 different directions simultaneously, disable your radio and remain silent for 10 minutes. Protocol 6. If anyone produces whistling sounds at night during any official contact, terminate all interaction immediately and vacate the area. I read through it twice, then looked at Captain Benali. Is this genuine? Does it appear to be a joke? She settled behind her desk and gestured toward a chair. I understand what they taught you in Phoenix. Pursue all leads, investigate all calls, follow evidence wherever it leads. Out here, those principles will result in your death. Captain, with all respect, these sound like traditional beliefs. She leaned forward. Your cousin Raymond, did he communicate with you during his final weeks working out here? My throat constricted. He stopped calling me during his last month. I assumed he was simply busy. He was terrified. He came to me 4 times requesting reassignment to Window Rock or Shiprock, anywhere except Chinle District. She retrieved a file from her drawer. 3 weeks before the incident, Raymond responded to a disturbance call near Standing Rock. Solo response because our staffing situation is challenging and backup was 40 miles distant. She slid the file across to me. Inside was Raymond's incident report, written in his careful handwriting. As I read, my hands began trembling. Arrived at Standing Rock area at approximately 22:15 hours. Complainant reported observing figures moving near the abandoned hogan on the northeast side. Approached on foot with flashlight and radio. Observed movement approximately 60 yards from hogan. Called out identification as NNPD officer. Figure stood upright from crouched position. Initially appeared human, but movement was unnatural. Walked on hands and feet simultaneously while maintaining upright posture. Pursued for approximately 40 seconds before it transitioned to running on 4 legs. Appeared to be same figure, but now clearly displaying animal characteristics. Ended pursuit per protocol and returned to vehicle. This can't be real, I whispered. That's not the most disturbing part. Captain Benali tapped the file. Raymond came back fundamentally changed. Started checking his back seat before entering his truck. Kept traditional items in his patrol vehicle. Made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would ensure he received proper traditional ceremonies. And then he died avoiding something on the road. Yes, Highway 191 near Mexican Hat. Area known for unusual occurrences. She closed the file. The investigating officer discovered tracks near the skid marks. Coyote prints, but abnormal. Too large, spaced too far apart. And Raymond's eyes were open when they found him. The emergency responders said it appeared he died in a state of extreme terror. The room felt significantly colder. You believe something killed him? Not an accident. I believe Raymond encountered something that shouldn't exist according to everything we learned in police academy. And I believe it remains out there. She stood and walked to the framed protocols. These rules were documented by my grandfather in 1971. He was among the first Navajo officers in this district. Over 32 years of service, he documented 19 incidents that couldn't be explained through conventional police methodology. What kind of incidents? Disappearances, mutilated livestock, people discovered miles from their last known location with no memory of how they arrived there, objects moving without apparent cause, and consistently, sightings of things that resembled humans but weren't. She turned to face me. My grandfather retired in 2004 and passed away 7 months later. His final words to me were, "The protocols preserve life. Nothing else matters." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist this was impossible, that we were law enforcement officers dealing with human criminals, not supernatural phenomena. But I kept thinking about Raymond's report, about his terror during those final weeks, about the unexplained tracks near his incident location. What am I supposed to tell people when I can't investigate calls because of these rules? You tell them you're following department protocol. Most locals understand completely. They know what exists out here. She handed me a radio and vehicle keys. You'll be partnered with Officer Marcus Nez for your first 3 weeks. He's been here 18 months. knows the district, knows the protocols. Learn from him. When do I start? Right now. Marcus is waiting outside. You're covering the Eastern Patrol route today. Standard wellness checks, traffic enforcement, whatever calls come through. She paused at the door. And Daniel, your cousin, was an excellent officer, but he made errors. He believed being Navajo meant he possessed immunity to the old dangers, that his heritage would protect him. Didn't. Don't make the same mistake. Outside, a younger officer leaned against a patrol truck, drinking coffee. He was perhaps in his late 20s with the compact build of someone who'd grown up doing physical labor. When he noticed me, he straightened but didn't smile. You're the new guy. Raymond's cousin. Daniel Yazzie. Marcus Nez. He opened the driver's side door. You're riding passenger until you know the territory. Hope you brought water and supplies. Out here, the next gas station might be 70 miles away. We drove in silence for the first 30 minutes, heading east on a dirt road winding between red rock formations. The landscape was simultaneously stunning and desolate. Endless desert punctuated by mesas and buttes, with clusters of hogans and trailers marking where people maintained their lives. The roads were unmarked, the distances vast. Captain, show you the protocols? Marcus finally asked. Yeah, read them on the wall. And they sound completely insane. Marcus laughed without humor. Give it 6 weeks, you'll understand. He took a turn onto an even smaller road. Your cousin Raymond. He was good people. Didn't deserve what happened. You were there the night he died? No, but I heard his last radio transmission. We were on overlapping shifts, both working late. Around 22:30, he called in that he was heading home on 191. Mentioned seeing unusual lights near Mexican Hat. I told him to be careful, maybe wait for me to catch up. He said he was fine, just tired. 25 minutes later, dispatch couldn't raise him. Took me 40 minutes to reach his location. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His truck was wrapped around a juniper tree, front end completely destroyed. But Daniel, here's what troubled me most. The skid marks showed he swerved hard to the right, like avoiding something significant. But there was nothing in the road. Nothing at all. The report mentioned tracks. Yeah, coyote prints, but wrong. I've hunted since childhood. I know exactly what coyote tracks look like. These were larger, deeper, and they came right up to the driver's side door. Like something had approached his window after the crash. A chill traveled down my spine. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting your cousin saw something. Something forced him to swerve. And I believe something was present when he died. Watching. Marcus glanced at me. Captain, show you his last incident report? The one about Standing Rock. Yes. Then you understand there are things out here that don't fit in our reports. Things we document as animal activity or suspicious circumstances because we don't have classification codes for what they actually are. We drove past a small cluster of homes and Marcus slowed, conducting a visual inspection. An elderly woman sat outside one residence, working on a loom. She looked up and waved. Marcus waved back. That's Mrs. Tadachini. She's lived here for 78 years. Last month she called in a prowler. Said someone was walking around her property at night, scratching at her windows. I came out, found tracks. Human feet walking normally, then transitioning to hands and feet, then to full animal gait. All the same prints showing complete transformation. What did you tell her? I told her to keep her doors secured, windows closed, and to sprinkle corn pollen around her property perimeter. Traditional protection. He accelerated again. Modern policing doesn't have answers for what we deal with out here, but traditional knowledge does. That's why the protocols reference medicine men and traditional ceremonies. Around noon, we stopped at a small trading post for lunch. Inside, the elderly owner greeted Marcus by name and looked at me with curious eyes. New officer, you're Raymond's cousin. I see the family resemblance. He extended his hand. Joe Bitsui. Sorry about your cousin. He was good people. Everyone here seemed to know Raymond. It reminded me how interconnected these communities were, how everyone was linked through family and clan ties extending back generations. Thank you, I said. You be careful out there. Joe said seriously. This is the time of year when things become active. First frost approaching soon, and they get hungry before winter. They? I asked. Joe and Marcus exchanged meaningful looks. He'll learn, Marcus said. Give him time. After lunch, we received our first call. Dispatch's voice crackled over the radio. Unit 5, we have a wellness check request. Lawrence Begay residence, Canyon del Muerto area. Family hasn't heard from him in 4 days. Marcus keyed the radio. Unit 5 responding. TA 40 minutes. We drove deeper into the backcountry, the roads becoming increasingly rough. The Begay residence was a traditional hogan and a small mobile home set in a remote canyon with towering red walls on 3 sides. Stay alert, Marcus said as we arrived. Wellness checks can deteriorate rapidly out here. Isolation, depression, sometimes substance issues, and sometimes... He trailed off. Sometimes what? Sometimes people disappear for reasons that aren't documented in any manual. We approached the hogan first. It was traditional 8-sided construction with log walls and an earth-covered roof. But as we got closer, I noticed something fundamentally wrong. The doorway faced north. Protocol 4. Do not enter any hogan with the doorway facing north. Marcus, I said, pointing. He stopped immediately, his hand moving toward his service weapon. North-facing door. What does that mean? It means no traditional Navajo would construct it that way. Doors always face east to greet the rising sun. A north-facing door is... He backed away slowly. It's wrong. Deliberate violation of tradition. Either someone built this specifically to trap something, or something inside altered it. That's not possible. You can't just change which direction a door faces. He pointed, and I saw what he meant. The logs had been rearranged, pulled out and reset. Recently, the earth around the doorway was disturbed, showing where heavy timbers had been moved. Someone had physically reconstructed the hogan, or something had. Marcus pulled out his radio. Unit 5 to dispatch. We have a north-facing hogan at the Begay residence. Requesting permission to contact Harold Sosi before proceeding. Copy, Unit 5. Stand by. We waited by our patrol truck watching the hogan. I couldn't shake the sensation that something was watching us back. The doorway was dark, and I couldn't see inside, but I kept sensing movement in that darkness, like something pacing back and forth just beyond the threshold. Who's Harold Sosi? I asked. Medicine man. One of the few who still knows the old ceremonies, the old protections. When we encounter something that doesn't fit normal police work, we contact him. Marcus pulled out a bottle of water, took a long drink. He's also about 87 years old and lives 40 miles from here, so this could take considerable time. We're just going to wait? What about Lawrence Begay? He could be inside, injured or ill. If he's in there, he's already beyond our assistance. Marcus's voice was flat. Protocol 4 exists because 3 officers died in the 1980s entering a north-facing hogan. They went in to check on an elderly woman who'd stopped responding to family. Found the hogan had been reconstructed with the door facing north. They entered anyway. What happened? They never emerged. Search teams found the hogan empty. No bodies, no blood, no evidence of struggle. Just the smell of decay and geometric impossibilities inside. The hogan was torn down and burned, and the ground was blessed. No one's supposed to build there anymore. I stared at the dark doorway. So we just wait for the medicine man. We wait for the medicine man. 50 minutes later, an old pickup truck arrived. An elderly Navajo man emerged, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who'd earned every one of his years. He wore traditional clothing, a velvet shirt, turquoise jewelry, his white hair tied back. Yat-ee, he greeted us. Captain Benali called. Said you found a north-facing hogan. Yes, sir, Marcus said. We're here on a wellness check. But you're not foolish enough to enter. Harold Sosi smiled approvingly. Good. The protocols keep you safe. He looked at me. You're new. Daniel Yazzie. Your cousin Raymond consulted me several times before his death. You knew my cousin? I tried to help him, but he was conflicted. Part of him wanted to believe in modern explanations, police training, logic. Part of him knew what he'd seen couldn't be explained that way. He walked toward the hogan, pulling out a small leather pouch. That conflict made him vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Harold Sosi didn't answer. He circled the hogan slowly, sprinkling corn pollen from his pouch, chanting in Navajo. I only caught fragments of it, words about protection, about boundaries, about containing evil. When he finished, he returned to us. No one is alive inside, but something is there. Something that shouldn't exist. What do we do? Marcus asked. You do nothing. This is beyond police work. I'll contact the family. Explain that the hogan must be destroyed. The ground will be blessed. And you'll document in your report that the residence was structurally unsafe and dangerous to enter. That's it? We just leave. Harold Sosi looked at me with ancient, knowing eyes. Officer Yazzie, your badge gives you authority over human law. But out here, there are older laws, older powers. The protocols exist to help you recognize when you've reached the boundary of your authority. This is that boundary. We drove away as the sun began setting, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and red. I kept checking my side mirror, half expecting to see something emerging from that dark doorway. Does this happen often? I asked Marcus. Often enough that we have protocols for it. He turned onto the main road. Welcome to tribal police, Daniel. It's not like Phoenix. Out here, we don't just deal with human criminals. We deal with everything else too. That night, lying in the small trailer I'd rented in Chinle, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Raymond, about his final weeks of terror, about what he'd seen at Standing Rock, about the north-facing hogan and Harold Sosi's words about older laws and older powers. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Your cousin understood too late. Will you learn faster? I sat up, adrenaline spiking. I tried calling the number back. It rang once, then a voice answered. Not words, but sounds. Breathing. Scraping. Something that might have been laughter. Then coyote howls. 3 of them from different directions. Except I wasn't outside. I was in my trailer. The howls were coming from my phone. I disconnected and threw the phone across the room. Protocol 5. If you hear coyote calls from 3 different directions simultaneously, turn off your radio and remain silent for 10 minutes. But the protocol referenced radios, not phones. Did it still apply? I sat in the darkness, listening. Outside, real coyotes began howling in response to the phantom calls. The sound echoed across the desert, lonely and predatory. And somewhere in that chorus, I was certain I heard something else. Something that sounded almost like my cousin's voice calling my name. I didn't tell Marcus about the text message or the phantom coyote calls. Didn't tell anyone. Part of me worried I'd imagined it, that stress and grief were creating paranoia. The other part knew exactly what I'd heard, and that terrified me more than admitting it. My second week on the job started quietly enough. Routine patrols, several traffic stops, wellness checks on elderly residents living alone in remote areas. Normal police work that almost made me forget the protocols and the north-facing hogan. Then we received the call about the jewelry. It was a cool October morning, the kind where your breath mists in the air and frost clings to shadowed areas. Marcus and I were patrolling Highway 191 when dispatch came through. Unit 5, we have a report of items on the roadway, mile marker 53, northbound lane. Possible accident, debris. Unit 5 responding, Marcus said. Mile marker 53 was 20 minutes away, a straight stretch of highway cutting through open desert. When we arrived, I could see what appeared to be silver objects scattered across the asphalt, glinting in the morning sun. Marcus pulled over and we exited the vehicle. As we approached, I realized what we were observing. Navajo jewelry. Substantial amounts of it. Turquoise and silver necklaces, bracelets, concho belts, pieces that would cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, just lying in the road. I reached down to pick up a particularly beautiful squash blossom necklace. Don't. Marcus grabbed my arm firmly enough to hurt. Don't touch anything. It's evidence. We need to collect it. Protocol 3, Daniel. Jewelry on roadways doesn't get touched. We mark it and contact Harold Sosi. I looked at the dozens of pieces scattered across maybe 30 yards of highway. This has to be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Someone lost a fortune here. We can't just leave it. We're not leaving it. We're protecting it until someone who knows what they're doing can handle it. Marcus was already on his radio. Unit 5 to dispatch. We need Harold Sosi at mile marker 53 on 191. Multiple ceremonial items on roadway. Requesting traffic control assistance. While we waited, Marcus set up cones to direct traffic around the jewelry. Several cars slowed down, drivers looking at the scattered pieces with expressions of concern. None of them attempted to take any. Why does everyone look frightened? I asked. Because they know what we're looking at. Marcus gestured at the jewelry. See how it's arranged? Not random. It's in a pattern. A circle, maybe 40 feet across, with specific pieces at the cardinal directions. He was correct. Once I stopped seeing individual pieces and looked at the overall pattern, it was obvious. Someone had carefully placed each item in a deliberate design. Who would do this? That's the wrong question. The right question is, what are they trying to accomplish? 25 minutes later, Harold Sosi arrived. He was dressed more formally today. Traditional sash, multiple turquoise necklaces, a medicine bundle hanging from his belt. When he saw the jewelry pattern, his face became grave. This is very serious, he said quietly. This is a summoning circle. Someone is attempting to call something across. Across from where? I asked. From the places that shouldn't touch our world. The in-between spaces. He walked around the circle slowly, careful not to step inside its boundary. Whoever created this used very old knowledge. Very dangerous knowledge. Can you stop it? I can disrupt it. But the person who made this will know. They'll know we interfered. He looked at Marcus. You need to find who did this quickly, before they attempt again. How do we find them? Harold Sosi pointed at the jewelry. These pieces belong to someone. Jewelry this fine, this old, doesn't just appear. Someone inherited these. Someone from the old families. So we're looking for someone with access to expensive traditional jewelry who also knows forbidden ceremonies. Marcus shook his head. That describes maybe 60 people on the reservation. No. Harold Sosi touched one of the concho belts without picking it up, just resting his finger on it. These belonged to the Yazzie family. I recognized the silverwork. Very distinctive style passed down through generations. But the Yazzies are mostly gone now. The last of them, Leonard Yazzie, died 4 months ago. Something clicked in my mind. 4 months ago, right around when my cousin started experiencing problems. The old man nodded slowly. Leonard Yazzie was a complicated man. He learned traditional ways, but he also learned things he shouldn't have. Dark things. Things that were forbidden by the medicine men but written down by anthropologists in the 1930s. When he died, his knowledge should have died with him. Unless he passed it on, Marcus said. Or unless his belongings were taken by someone who understood their value. Harold Sosi began the ceremony to disrupt the circle, chanting and using corn pollen to break the pattern. You need to visit the Yazzie place. See if anything else is missing. And be careful. If someone is using this knowledge, they're already walking a very dangerous path. After Harold Sosi finished and the jewelry was collected as evidence, Marcus and I drove to the Yazzie residence. It was a small ranch-style house about 40 miles off the highway, accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through a narrow canyon. The house appeared abandoned. Windows dark, weeds growing around the foundation, a general atmosphere of neglect. But as we pulled up, I noticed fresh tire tracks in the dust. Someone had been here recently. Weapon ready, Marcus said quietly. If someone's inside, they're trespassing. And if they took Leonard's ceremonial items, they might be dangerous in other ways. We approached the house tactically, one on each side of the door. Marcus knocked. Navajo Nation Police. Anyone inside needs to come out now. No response. The door was unlocked. We entered carefully. The interior had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, Drawers pulled out, closets emptied. Someone had been searching for something specific. In what had been Leonard's study, we found more evidence. Books on Navajo ceremonies lay scattered across the floor, many with pages torn out. A locked cabinet had been forced open, its contents gone. And on the wall, written in what looked like ash, were Navajo words I didn't understand. "Marcus, can you read this?" He came over, looked at the writing, and his face went pale. "That's not something that should be written down. That's part of a healing ceremony. But twisted, altered. Instead of healing and protection, this is about—" He trailed off. "About what?" "About transformation. About calling old powers and making arrangements with them." He pulled out his phone and photographed it. "Harold Tsosi needs to see this immediately." As we were leaving, I noticed something in the bedroom. A photo album fallen behind the nightstand. I pulled it out and started flipping through it. Old family photos. Leonard Yazzie through the decades. His wife who'd died years ago. Children and grandchildren. Then I saw a photo that made my blood run cold. Leonard Yazzie standing with a younger man, both smiling at the camera. The younger man wore a turquoise bracelet I recognized. I'd seen it recently. "Marcus, look at this." He studied the photo. "That's Leonard and that's Curtis Tsosi. He works at the trading post in Chinle. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself. He's wearing one of the bracelets from the circle. Same distinctive style." So Curtis had access to Leonard's jewelry and to his knowledge. Marcus was already heading for the door. "We need to find him now." We drove back toward Chinle, but Curtis wasn't at the trading post. The owner, Joe Bitsui, said he'd called in that morning, said he wouldn't be coming to work. Hadn't shown up for his shift. "Did he say why?" Marcus asked. "Just said he had something important to do." Sounded strange on the phone. Distant. Joe looked worried. "Curtis is a good person. Quiet. Respectful. But after Leonard died, he changed. Started asking unusual questions about the old ways, about ceremonies that shouldn't be discussed." We obtained Curtis's address from dispatch. A small trailer on the eastern edge of Chinle, backing up to open desert. When we pulled up, his truck was parked outside, but something felt wrong. The air was too still, too quiet. "I don't like this," Marcus said, unsnapping his holster. We approached the trailer. The door was slightly ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. Through the gap, I could see candles burning inside. Dozens of them. "Curtis Tsosi, this is Navajo Nation Police. We need to speak with you." No response. Just the flicker of candlelight and that oppressive silence. Marcus tried again. "Curtis, we know about the jewelry, about Leonard Yazzie's belongings. We just want to talk." Still nothing. Marcus looked at me and I nodded. We entered the trailer, weapons drawn. The interior was arranged like a ceremonial space. Candles everywhere. Corn pollen sprinkled in patterns. More of Leonard's jewelry arranged in specific designs. And in the center of it all, Curtis Tsosi sat cross-legged, eyes closed, chanting in Navajo. "Curtis, you need to stop," Marcus said. "Whatever you're doing, it's dangerous." Curtis's eyes opened. They were wrong, completely black like voids. When he spoke, his voice had harmonics, like multiple people speaking simultaneously. "Too late. The door is open. The old one is coming through. And it's hungry." "Jesus," Marcus breathed. "Daniel, we need to leave right now." But I couldn't move. I was staring at Curtis, at the way his form seemed to flicker and shift, like he was occupying multiple spaces at once. And behind him, in shadows where no shadows should exist, something was taking shape. Something tall and pale with too many joints and eyes that reflected the candlelight like an animal's. "Daniel!" Marcus grabbed my arm, breaking the spell. We backed out of the trailer, never taking our eyes off Curtis and the thing forming behind him. Outside, Marcus was already on his radio. "Unit 5 to all units. Officer needs assistance. Harold Tsosi, immediate response. We have a critical situation at the Tsosi residence." The trailer started shaking. The candles inside flickered and extinguished, plunging the interior into darkness. Then Curtis emerged, but he was moving wrong. Jerky and inhuman. The old one wants what was taken, he said in that multi-layered voice. A life for a life. The Yazzie cousin paid part of the debt. Now the debt continues. My heart stopped. What did you do to Raymond? The old one was summoned but not fed. Leonard promised offerings but died before completing the ceremony. So the old one took what it could find on the roads. A young man alone at night, pure of heart. Curtis smiled, and it was the most terrible thing I'd ever witnessed. He tasted good, like fear and confusion. I drew my weapon. You killed my cousin. No, the old one killed him. I just opened the door. Curtis tilted his head at an impossible angle. And now the door stays open until the debt is paid. Unless what? Unless you close it. Only someone with Yazzie blood can reverse the ceremony. But Curtis has no blood left. It's all been offered. He gestured at the trailer, and I saw blood seeping out from under the door. Marcus's hand was on my shoulder. Don't listen to him. That thing is lying. It's trying to manipulate you. But I was remembering Raymond's last words to my mother, relayed through a voicemail. Tell Daniel I'm sorry. I understand now. There are old debts in our family. Old connections to things that shouldn't be remembered. What old debts? I asked Curtis. What connection does my family have to Leonard Yazzie? Curtis laughed. Your grandmother was a Yazzie before she married. You carry that blood, that knowledge, that ability. He took a step closer. The old one knew Raymond, and now it knows you. It will hunt you until you feed it or close the door. There is no third option. Sirens in the distance. Backup was coming. But Curtis was already changing. His form becoming less human and more like the pale thing I'd seen in the shadows. He dropped to all fours and ran, not toward the desert but parallel to it, moving faster than any human could. Protocol 2. If you pursue someone and they transition from running on 2 legs to 4, stop pursuit immediately. Let him go, Marcus said, though he sounded like it physically pained him. We can't chase that. Not what he's become. 3 patrol cars pulled up along with Harold Sosie's truck. The old medicine man moved fast for someone his age, heading straight into the trailer. He emerged moments later, his face ashen. The boy is dead, but his body was used to anchor the summoning. The entity that came through is still connected to this place. He looked at me, and to you, through your grandmother's blood. I don't understand any of this. Your grandmother's sister, Helen Yazzie, married Leonard. That makes you and Leonard family, distant but connected. When Leonard started the forbidden ceremony, he used family bloodlines as part of the binding. Harold Sosie placed a hand on my shoulder. The entity he summoned is hunting along those bloodlines. Took Raymond, and now it knows about you. So what do I do? You have 2 choices. Run. Leave the reservation. Break the physical connection to this land. The entity can't follow beyond the boundaries of Navajo Nation. Or you finish what Leonard started. Learn the ceremony, understand the binding, and close the door properly. It's dangerous. Many who attempt such things don't survive. What happened to Curtis? Is he responsible? This is beyond police work. The old man smiled sadly. This was beyond police work until the entity marked you. Now it's personal. Now it's about family and blood and debts that go back generations. Those are things police badges don't protect against. That night, Harold Sosie took me to his home, a traditional hogan far from any roads. Inside, he showed me things Leonard Yazzie had collected over his lifetime. Books written by anthropologists in the 1930s who'd recorded ceremonies that should have stayed oral tradition only. Notes on summoning rituals that predated the Navajo people, borrowed from even older tribes, and diagrams showing how to create doorways to spaces that existed alongside our world but separate from December 11th. Leonard was trying to gain power, Harold Sosie explained. He wanted to be important, to be remembered as a medicine man greater than any before him. But you cannot force power. It must be earned through years of study, through living properly, through service to the people. So he took shortcuts. Yes, and those shortcuts have consequences. The entity he summoned is called the Night Watcher. It exists in the spaces between day and night, between life and death, between human and animal. When called, it grants power but demands payment. Leonard promised it offerings but died before fulfilling his promise, so it began taking offerings on its own. Raymond. Raymond was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Young, vital, with Yazzie blood. Perfect prey. Harold Sosi handed me a bundle wrapped in red cloth. Inside are protection items. Corn pollen, white shell, turquoise, jet. Keep them with you always. They won't stop the Night Watcher, but they'll slow it down. Give you time to fight or run. I'm not running. Then you're learning. Starting tomorrow, you'll come here every evening after your shift. I'll teach you what I can. The proper ceremonies. The safe ways to work with power. And eventually, how to close the door Leonard opened. How long will that take? Months, perhaps years. The ceremony is complex, and one mistake means death. He looked at me seriously. Are you certain you want to do this? You could leave tomorrow. Return to Phoenix. Live a normal life. I thought about Raymond, about his terror in those final weeks, about him dying alone on a dark highway, watching something pale and wrong approach his window. I thought about all the other people who might die if that door stayed open. I'm certain. Over the next 4 weeks, my life split into 2 separate routines. During the day, I was Officer Daniel Yazzie, doing normal police work with Marcus. Traffic stops, domestic disturbances, wellness checks, following the protocols, learning the district, slowly becoming part of the community. At night, I was something else. A student learning traditions that were usually restricted to medicine men. Ceremonies that took years to master. Harold Sosi was a patient but demanding teacher. He made me memorize chants in Navajo, practice drawing protection symbols in sand, learn the proper way to make offerings. And always the Night Watcher circled closer. I'd see it sometimes, just at the edge of perception. A pale figure standing in the distance during patrols. A shape moving parallel to my truck on dark roads. Once I woke in the middle of the night to find handprints on my trailer window. Handprints that were too large with too many fingers. Marcus noticed my exhaustion. You look terrible. Thanks. Seriously. Are you sleeping? Not much. Harold Sosi is working me hard. You know about that? Everyone knows. Small community, Daniel. When the medicine man starts training someone, people notice. He pulled over at a scenic overlook, killed the engine. Is it helping? Are you learning how to stop this thing? I don't know. Maybe. Harold says I'm progressing faster than anyone he's taught before. Says the Yazzie blood makes the knowledge easier to access. I rubbed my eyes. But it's like learning a language while someone's hunting you. Every night I study, I feel it getting closer. What's it waiting for? Harold Sosi thinks it's testing me, seeing if I'll run or fight. The entity feeds on fear as much as anything. If I run, it wins. If I learn enough to fight, there's a chance I can close the door and banish it. And if you make a mistake, then I end up like Raymond. Or worse. We sat in silence, watching the sun set over the desert. Monument Valley stretched out before us, those iconic formations that appeared in countless photographs and movies. Beautiful and ancient and indifferent to human concerns. Your cousin was my friend, Marcus said quietly. I should have pushed harder when he said things were getting strange. Should have made him talk to Harold Sosi earlier. You couldn't have stopped it. None of us could. This was set in motion before any of us knew there was a problem. I know, but I still feel like I failed him. He looked at me. I'm not going to fail you. Whatever you need. Back up at any time. Someone to watch your back. I'm there. Thanks. And Daniel, when you face this thing, and you will face it, remember what Raymond forgot. You're not alone. We have protocols. We have medicine men. We have community. Don't try to be a hero. That's what gets people killed out here. He was right. But I also knew something he didn't. The final ceremony to close the door, the one that would banish the Night Watcher and end this nightmare, required something specific. It required Yazzie blood. My blood. and Harold had been very careful not to specify how much. The night everything changed began like any other night. Marcus and I were on the evening shift, patrolling the northern sector. It was early November, and the air was cold enough that frost formed on windshields and our breath vaporized in the air. Around 9 o'clock, we received a call about a disturbance at the Chinley chapter house. Someone had broken into the community center and was destroying ceremonial items stored there. Unit 5 responding, Marcus said into the radio. To me, that's not good. The chapter house stores sacred items for ceremonies. If someone's desecrating them, it could be Curtis, I finished, or whatever he's become. We reached the chapter house in 20 minutes. The building was dark except for one light in the back room where ceremonial items were kept. The front door had been forced open, the lock broken. Armed response, Marcus said, drawing his weapon. If that thing is inside, bullets won't stop it, but they might slow it down. We entered tactically, clearing rooms as we progressed. The main hall was empty. The kitchen, the offices, all empty. But the door to the ceremonial storage room was open, and I could hear sounds inside. Chanting, the same multi-layered voice Curtis had used. Marcus held up 3 fingers, counted down, and we entered fast. Curtis Tsosi stood in the center of the room, surrounded by destroyed ceremonial items. Kachina dolls torn apart, medicine bundles emptied and scattered, ceremonial clothing shredded. He'd arranged the debris in another circle, similar to the jewelry on the highway. And he was bleeding, cutting his own arms with a piece of broken glass, letting blood drip onto the items. Curtis Tsosi, you're under arrest, Marcus commanded. Drop the glass and get on the ground. Curtis turned to face us. His eyes were still that void black, but now his skin had taken on a grayish pallor, stretched too tight over bones that seemed to be changing shape underneath. When he smiled, his teeth were too sharp, too numerous. Officer Yazzie, the old one's favorite. He talks about you constantly, about how you will taste sweeter than your cousin, about how your blood will satisfy the debt and allow him to stay in this world permanently. Last warning, Marcus said. On the ground now. Curtis laughed and dropped to all fours. But instead of running, he just crouched there, head tilted, studying us like a predator choosing between prey. You know what's interesting about the protocols? He said conversationally. They work because people follow them. But what happens when someone knows the protocols and deliberately breaks them? What happens when someone forces officers to violate their own rules? Before I could respond, Curtis bolted. Not toward the door, but straight at us. Marcus fired twice, center mass. The bullets hit. I saw them impact, but Curtis didn't stop. He crashed into Marcus, knocking him down, then continued past, running on all fours out the door. Marcus, I helped him up. He was winded but uninjured. I'm fine. Go. Don't lose him. I ran after Curtis, my flashlight beam bouncing as I sprinted. He was fast, inhumanly fast, but I could track him by sound. He was heading away from town, out into open desert, toward the old mining area that had been abandoned since the 1950s. My radio crackled. Daniel, stand down. Protocol 2. You can't pursue someone who transitions to 4 legs. But I couldn't stop. Curtis had information about Raymond's death, about the Night Watcher, about how to end this. If I lost him now, I might never get another chance. I chased him for perhaps 15 minutes, my lungs burning in the cold air. He led me to the old mining complex. Rusted equipment, collapsed buildings, shafts that dropped into darkness. Dangerous even in daylight, potentially fatal at night. Curtis stopped at the entrance to the largest shaft, standing upright now, waiting for me. Good, he said as I approached, weapon drawn. You're predictable. Your cousin was too. That's what made him easy to guide to the right place at the right time. You killed Raymond? No. I told you the old one killed him. But I helped. Left things on the highway to lure him. Made calls that sounded like emergencies. Drew him to Mexican Hat at exactly the right time when the old one was hungry. Curtis smiled that horrible smile. He was so confused when his truck wouldn't respond properly. when the steering pulled hard to the right no matter what he did. When something pale stepped out of the darkness and he couldn't look away. Rage flooded through me. You! The ceremony requires 3 offerings. 3 bloodline members. Raymond was the first. You'll be the second. Curtis gestured behind me. I spun around. Standing about 30 yards away was the night watcher. It was worse than I'd imagined. Tall, maybe 8 feet, with skin the color of bone. Its limbs were 2 long joints bending in ways that made my eyes hurt to track. Its face was almost human but wrong. Eyes too large and reflective. A mouth that seemed to split wider than physics should allow. And it was constantly shifting, like my brain couldn't quite process its true form and kept trying to make it human. Daniel, the offerings are ready, it said, and its voice was beautiful, melodic, compelling, like hearing a song from childhood. Give yourself to me, and the debt is satisfied. Your cousin's death gains meaning. Curtis goes free. The door closes. Don't listen to it. Marcus's voice came through my radio. Harold Sosi says it's lying. The ceremony needs 3 offerings, but not the way it claims. Daniel, get out of there. But I couldn't move. The night watcher was coming closer, and part of me wanted to go to it. Wanted to satisfy the debt. To make Raymond's death mean something. To end the fear and exhaustion and constant vigilance. That's right, it crooned. Come home. Come to the space between. Your grandmother's sister knew me. Leonard knew me. Raymond knew me at the end. Now it's your turn. It reached out with one of those 2 long hands, fingers extended. I could see symbols carved into its palm, glowing faintly. The same symbols that had been on the walls of Leonard Yazzi's house. My hand moved toward it, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop it. Then something hit me from the side, knocking me down. Marcus had arrived, tackling me away from the night watcher. Curtis shrieked and charged at us, but Marcus fired again, emptying his magazine. The bullets didn't harm Curtis, but the noise and impact disrupted his momentum long enough for us to scramble backward. Run! Marcus shouted. We ran, the night watcher and Curtis following, but they weren't moving at full speed. They were hurting us, I realized, keeping us moving in a specific direction, toward the deepest mineshaft, the one with no safety railings, just a black pit dropping into the earth. Marcus, stop. I grabbed his arm. It's a trap. They're pushing us toward. The ground gave way beneath us. We fell maybe 20 feet before hitting a slope, sliding and tumbling down into the old mine. My flashlight was gone, lost in the fall. Marcus's was still attached to his belt, the beam spinning crazily as we slid. We came to rest in what had been a mining tunnel, our landing cushioned by decades of accumulated dirt and debris. I hurt everywhere, but nothing felt broken. You okay? I asked Marcus. Been better, he groaned, sitting up. Where are we? His flashlight revealed a horizontal tunnel, maybe 7 feet high and 5 feet wide, stretching in both directions. The walls were rough rock held up by ancient timbers that creaked ominously. And carved into those walls were symbols, hundreds of them, covering every surface. This isn't a mine, Marcus breathed. It's something else. He was right. The symbols were too old, predating both the mining operation and the Navajo people. This tunnel had been here long before settlers came looking for silver and uranium. This was something ancient. Leonard found this place, I realized. This is where he learned the forbidden ceremonies. Someone carved these symbols thousands of years ago, and Leonard studied them, copied them, used them. And now we're trapped down here with that thing. Marcus checked his radio. No signal. We were too deep underground. Above us, I could hear movement. Scraping sounds like something crawling down the shaft we'd fallen through. Coming for us. We have to move, I said. Pick a direction and go. Which way? I pulled out the protection bundle Harold Sosi had given me. The turquoise stone felt warm to the touch, and when I held it up, it seemed to pull slightly in one direction, like a compass. But instead of pointing north, it pointed toward. What? Safety? A way out? This way, I said, following the pull. We moved as fast as we dared. Marcus's flashlight our only source of illumination. The tunnel twisted and branched, and each time we came to a junction, I followed the turquoise's guidance. Behind us, the scraping sounds grew closer. After perhaps 15 minutes of stumbling through darkness, we emerged into a larger chamber. The flashlight beam revealed a space the size of a small room, with walls covered in more symbols. In the center was a stone platform, and arranged on it were 3 objects: a turquoise necklace, a white shell bracelet, and a piece of jet jewelry. Leonard's offerings, I realized. The ones he'd promised but never completed. This is where the ceremony was supposed to be finished, I said. This is the center of it all. Then this is where we make our stand. Marcus positioned himself at the tunnel entrance, weapon ready. Whatever comes through, I'll slow it down. You figure out how to close this door. Marcus, your weapon won't stop it. Maybe not, but I can be annoying. He smiled grimly. Besides, someone has to watch your back. That's what partners do. The scraping sound stopped. Then Curtis emerged from the tunnel, moving on all fours, his body now more animal than human. Behind him came the night watcher, its form seeming to grow larger in the confined space. End of the line, it said. No more running. The ceremony completes here, with or without your cooperation. I looked at the offerings on the platform, at the symbols on the walls, trying to remember everything Harold Sosi had taught me. The ceremony required 3 offerings, yes, but not 3 deaths. 3 acts of sacrifice. 3 choices to give something precious for the good of others. Raymond had died without choosing. That was the first offering taken by force. But I could choose. That was the difference. I picked up the turquoise necklace and held it to my chest. In Navajo, I began the prayer Harold Sosi had taught me. The proper one, not the twisted version Leonard had used. The one about protection and boundaries and keeping evil contained. The night watcher shrieked. No, that's not how the ceremony works. You're right, I said. Leonard did it wrong. He tried to summon you for power to control you. But the original ceremony wasn't about control. It was about acknowledgement. About recognizing that things like you exist and establishing proper boundaries. I continued the prayer, picking up the shell bracelet. The symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, responding to the words. This was the original purpose of this chamber. Not to summon entities from the spaces between, but to communicate with them. To establish terms of coexistence. The first offering is acknowledgement, I said. I acknowledge that you exist, that you have power, that you are part of the old ways. And the third offering is choice. The choice to protect my people. The choice to close the door properly. The choice to end this. I bit my thumb hard enough to draw blood and let 3 drops fall onto each piece of jewelry. Yazzie blood, freely given. Not taken by force. The effect was immediate. The symbols blazed with light, and the night watcher screamed. Not a sound of rage, but of something being torn away, returned to wherever it had come from. Its form began to dissolve, pulled backward into the shadows. No, it howled. The debt is not paid. 3 deaths were promised. 3 sacrifices were required. I corrected. Raymond sacrificed his life unknowingly. I sacrificed my blood willingly. And Leonard sacrificed his soul through his actions. The debt is paid. The door is closed. You are banished. The light intensified until I had to close my eyes. When I opened them again, the night watcher was gone. And Curtis Sosi lay on the ground, human again, breathing shallowly. Daniel, he whispered. What happened? I remember Leonard teaching me things. Then everything gets dark. What did I do? We'll talk about it later, Marcus said, moving to check his pulse. We need to get you medical attention. Took us 3 hours to find our way out of the tunnels. Marcus supported Curtis while I followed the turquoise's guidance back to the surface. When we finally emerged, dawn was breaking over the desert, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Harold Sosi was waiting at the mine entrance, along with Captain Benali and 4 other officers. You did it, the old medicine man said simply. I felt the ceremony complete. The door is closed. Curtis is alive, I said. But I don't know how much he remembers or what the entity did to him. We'll help him. There are cleansing ceremonies, ways to heal the damage done. Harold Sosi placed a hand on my shoulder. You chose well, Daniel Yazzie. You understood what your cousin didn't have time to learn. That the old powers respect choice and sacrifice, not force and demands. Curtis was taken to the hospital in Flagstaff. Over the next several days, he slowly recovered. He remembered parts of what happened. Leonard teaching him forbidden knowledge. The entity slowly taking control. Orchestrating Raymond's death. He would face consequences for desecration and for his role in what happened, but he was also a victim. The tribal court would take that into account. As for me, I continued working as a tribal police officer. The protocols made sense now. They weren't just superstitions or traditional beliefs. They were accumulated wisdom, ways to recognize when you'd reached the boundary between human law and something older. 1 week after the mine incident, I visited Raymond's grave. It was in the tribal cemetery, overlooking the desert he'd loved. Someone had placed fresh flowers there. Probably my mother. I understand now, I said to the headstone. Why you were so frightened. Why you couldn't explain it to me. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Sorry you had to face it alone. The wind picked up, carrying red dust across the cemetery. And just for a moment, I swear I felt something. Not the night watcher, but something warmer. Like Raymond was there, finally at peace. Marcus found me there an hour later. Captain wants to see you. Something about a ceremony. At the station, I found not just Captain Benali, but Harold Sosi and about 30 community members. The old medicine man stepped forward, holding a medicine bundle. Daniel Yazzie, you have walked between two worlds. You have used both modern law enforcement and traditional knowledge to protect the people. You have closed a door that should never have been opened and restored balance. He handed me the bundle. The elders have asked me to recognize you as someone who walks the path of both policeman and medicine man. This is rare, and it carries responsibility. I'm not a medicine man, I protested. I've only studied for a few weeks. And in those weeks, you learned what some never learn in a lifetime. You learned that power without wisdom is dangerous. That respect for the old ways matters. That choice and sacrifice are more powerful than force. He smiled. You have much more to learn, yes, but you have begun the journey. Captain Benali stepped forward. Officer Yazzie, I'm also here to inform you that you're being promoted. Senior officer with additional duties as tribal liaison for unusual cases. Basically, when we get calls that don't fit normal police work, you'll handle them. With proper support and backup, of course. And payment, Harold Sosi added. The tribal council has approved a stipend for your additional training as a traditional practitioner. I looked around at the faces gathered there. My community, my people. The ones I'd left nearly a decade ago because I thought the city offered something better. I've been wrong. This was where I belonged. I accept, I said. For months past, winter settled in deep, covering the red rocks with snow and dropping the temperature well below freezing at night. I found a new routine. Regular patrol duty during the day. Training with Harold Sosi in the evenings. Slowly learning the rituals and traditional knowledge that usually took decades to master. Marcus and I had become a solid team. He knew when to call me for unusual situations, and I knew when to defer to his greater experience with standard police work. Together, we covered more ground than either of us could alone. Curtis Sosi recovered physically, though the psychological scars ran deep. He spent time in a treatment facility in Albuquerque, working with both traditional healers and modern therapists to process what had happened to him. The tribal court eventually sentenced him to community service and probation, recognizing that he'd been manipulated by forces beyond his understanding. The protocols remained in place, of course. 6 rules that kept officers safe. And now I understood why each one mattered. I'd lived through violations of almost all of them. Then we received the call that tested everything I'd learned. It was a Tuesday in February, about 6 in the evening. Marcus and I were finishing our shift when dispatch came through with urgency in her voice. All units, we have a missing child. Jessica Bitsui, age 8. Last seen at her home, near Chinley Creek around 4:30. Parents report she went outside to play and didn't return. Air temperature dropping. Possible exposure situation. Every available officer responded. Missing children were all hands on deck, especially in winter when exposure could kill in hours. Within 40 minutes, we had search teams organized, with volunteers from the community joining us. I was assigned to search the area north of the Bitsui residence, along Chinley Creek. The sun was setting, temperature already below freezing. A little girl in regular clothes wouldn't last the night out here. Marcus joined me, along with Joe Bitsui from the trading post and 3 volunteers. We spread out in a line, sweeping through brush and arroyos, calling Jessica's name. After an hour of searching, I found something. A small footprint in a patch of snow. Child-sized, heading away from the residence. But next to it was another print. Larger, with odd spacing between the toes. Marcus, look at this. He examined the prints with his flashlight. That's not good. The larger print looks like something walking on hands and feet, following the child. I finished. We both knew what that meant. Something had taken interest in Jessica Bitsui. Something that shouldn't exist according to modern understanding, but was all too real out here. We need to call Harold Sosi, Marcus said. But there was no time. The temperature was dropping fast, and Jessica had already been missing for over 2 hours. If we waited for the medicine man to arrive, she might die of exposure before we found her. I'm going after her, I said. You coordinate with the other search teams. Tell them to avoid this area and focus on other sectors. Daniel, Protocol 1. Don't investigate alone after dark. A child is dying. The rules can wait. The rules exist because children have died before. Because officers have died trying to save them. Marcus grabbed my arm. At least let me come with you. No. If something happens to me, you need to be alive to tell Harold Sosi what we found. He'll know what to do. I followed the tracks, moving as fast as I dared in the growing darkness. The trail led along the creek, then up into rougher terrain. The child's prints were steady at first, then started showing signs of panic. Longer strides, stumbling, falling and getting back up. And the other prints stayed right beside them, pacing her, hurting her. After 30 minutes, I heard it, whistling, high-pitched and melodic, but wrong. The kind of sound that raised every hair on my body. Protocol 6. If anyone whistles at night during any official contact, and all contact immediately. But this wasn't an official contact. This was a child being hunted by something that used whistling to lure or frighten its prey. I moved toward the sound, my hand on my service weapon, even though I knew bullets wouldn't help. The tracks led to a small box canyon with rock walls on 3 sides. A natural trap. At the far end, I saw Jessica. She was huddled against the rock wall, crying silently, too terrified even to call for help. And between us, blocking the only exit, stood a figure. It was human-shaped, but wrong in the same way Curtis had been wrong when the entity possessed him. Too tall, limbs at odd angles, joints bending in unnatural ways, skin that seemed to shift between flesh and something else in the moonlight. It was whistling that awful melody, watching Jessica with predatory patience. When it sensed me, it turned. The face was the worst part, almost human, but with eyes that reflected light like an animal's and a mouth full of teeth that no human should have. Officer, it said, and the voice was familiar. Took me a moment to place it. Then I realized with horror that it sounded like my cousin. Like Raymond. You're too late. The child is ours now. Just like your cousin was ours. You're not the night watcher, I said, keeping my voice steady, even though my hands shook. That door is closed. So what are you? A cousin. A relative. A thing that hunts when the door is open or closed. Tilted its head. Your ceremony banished one of us. But we are many. We have always been here in the places between. And we hunger. Jessica whimpered, and the sound seemed to excite the creature. Took a step toward her. Stop, I commanded, moving to block its path. I'm taking the child and leaving. Are you? It laughed, the sound echoing off canyon walls. You can try, but the rules say you shouldn't be here alone. Shouldn't be investigating after dark. You violated your own protocols, officer. That makes you pray too. It was right. I'd broken Protocol 1 and now I was vulnerable. But I was also done being afraid. Done watching these things hurt my people. I pulled out the medicine bundle Harold Sosi had given me and opened it. Corn pollen, turquoise, white shell, jet. The 4 sacred stones of Navajo tradition. And something else. A small leather pouch filled with ashes from the mine chamber. From the place where the original boundary between worlds had been established. You know what this is? I asked the creature. It stopped moving, its reflective eyes fixed on the pouch. Ashes from the old place. The first boundary. That's right. And I was there when the ceremony was completed. When the door was properly closed and the boundaries re-established. I opened the pouch and let some ash fall into my palm. I may not be a full medicine man yet, but I carry the authority of that ceremony. The authority to maintain boundaries. You're bluffing. You don't have the knowledge or the power. Maybe I was bluffing. I'd only been studying for 4 months. But I also remembered something Harold Sosi had told me. Power doesn't come from age or experience alone. It comes from choice and sacrifice. You've already proven you have both. I began to chant. Not one of the complex ceremonies that took hours, but a simple prayer of protection. The kind mothers say over their children. The kind my grandmother had probably said over Raymond and me when we were young. As I chanted, I walked forward, spreading the ash in a line between the creature and Jessica. With each word, I felt something building. Not power flowing from me, but through me. The accumulated strength of generations who'd lived on this land, who'd faced these dangers, who'd established and maintained boundaries. The creature hissed and backed away from the line of ash. That won't hold. Not for long. I'm older than your prayers. Older than your ceremonies. Maybe, I agreed. But you're not older than the land itself. And the land remembers the boundaries. Remembers when things like you stayed in your own spaces and didn't hunt our children. I continued chanting, adding corn pollen to the ash line. The creature was pressed against the canyon wall now, unable or unwilling to cross the barrier I'd created. It burns. It hissed. The old ash burns. Jessica reached me and I scooped her up with one arm, keeping the medicine bundle in my other hand. The creature watched us with those horrible eyes, calculating. This isn't over, officer. We are many. We hunt when we hunger. And you cannot protect everyone. No, I agreed. But I can protect this child tonight. And tomorrow I'll protect someone else. And the day after that, another. That's what we do. That's what my cousin died trying to do. And it's what I'll keep doing until I can't anymore. I backed out of the canyon slowly, keeping the medicine bundle raised, maintaining the chant. The creature didn't follow. It just watched us go. Its form seeming to fade into the shadows until I couldn't tell if it was still there or had vanished. Back at the search staging area, Jessica was reunited with her sobbing parents. The paramedics checked her for injuries and exposure. She was cold and terrified, but physically unharmed. Marcus pulled me aside. What happened out there? Later. First, I need to see Harold Sosi. The old medicine man was waiting at his home when I arrived, like he'd known I was coming. I told him everything. The creature in the canyon, the ash line, the chant that had somehow worked despite my limited training. He listened without interrupting, then said, "You're progressing faster than expected. But Daniel, you also took a serious risk. What you faced tonight was a skinwalker or something similar. One of the old ones who walks between forms. I know, but I couldn't let it take Jessica. And that's why you succeeded. The choice to protect despite personal danger. That's what gives the ceremonies their power." He poured us both coffee. But you need to understand something. When you step between worlds like that, when you use traditional power to enforce boundaries, you make yourself visible to all the things that live in the between spaces. You mean more of them will come after me? Yes. You're marked now. Not as prey but as something else. As someone who maintains boundaries. Some entities will respect that. Others will challenge it. He handed me a new medicine bundle, larger than the first. This contains stronger protections, and I'm going to accelerate your training. You need to know more. Learn faster, because word spreads in the old places. And soon, every skinwalker, every entity, everything that shouldn't be will know about the Navajo cop who closed the night watcher's door. Over the next several months, my life became even more complicated. Regular police work during the day. Traffic stops, domestic calls, drunk and disorderly. But increasingly, I also handled the calls that other officers couldn't explain. Objects moving on their own. Strange tracks near livestock killings. People who'd gone missing and returned with no memory of where they'd been. I became known in the community as someone who understood both worlds. Families would call me directly, bypassing dispatch, when they experienced something that didn't fit modern explanations. Harold Sosi introduced me to other medicine people. Slowly, I was being accepted into that world too. Marcus adapted to our new normal. He learned which calls to handle himself and which ones required my particular skills. We developed a system. He'd handle the crime scene, the evidence, the reports. I'd handle the traditional aspects, the ceremonies, the negotiations with things that shouldn't exist. Captain Benali officially designated us as the Special Circumstances Unit, though everyone just called us the Weird Detail. We got the calls that made no sense, that violated natural law, that required thinking beyond modern police training. And the protocols remained essential. I'd learned firsthand why each one mattered. I'd violated Protocol 1 to save Jessica and barely survived. I'd seen what happened when Protocol 2 was ignored, when Protocol 3 was dismissed as superstition. One evening in late spring, I was finishing paperwork when Marcus knocked on my door. "Got something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from the tribal council. I'd been formally recognized as both a law enforcement officer and as someone training in traditional ways. They were creating a new position specifically for me, cultural liaison officer, with responsibilities spanning both police work and traditional protection ceremonies. "That's a fancy title," I said. "Yeah, but it comes with a raise and recognition that what you're doing matters." Marcus grinned. "Plus, it means I don't have to explain to dispatch why we're sprinkling corn pollen at crime scenes." That night, I drove out to Raymond's grave. It had become a habit, visiting him once a week, updating him on my life. "I understand now why you came back," I told the headstone. "Why you left Phoenix and took a job that paid less and scared you more. This is home. These are our people. And sometimes protecting them means facing things that don't make sense." The wind carried red dust across the cemetery, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard Raymond's voice. "You figured it out faster than I did. I'm proud of you, cousin." Maybe it was imagination. Maybe it was grief. Or maybe, on the reservation, the boundary between the living and the dead was thinner than elsewhere. Out here, anything was possible. As I drove back to Chinley, I thought about the protocols hanging on the station wall. 6 rules that seemed impossible until you understood they were survival instructions. 6 rules based on experiences that couldn't be explained through modern law enforcement training. I'd learned to follow those rules, but I'd also learned when and how to bend them, when a child's life was at stake, when protecting the community required stepping into dangerous territory, when being a police officer meant more than just enforcing human laws. The badge I wore represented modern authority. The medicine bundle in my pocket represented traditional power. And somehow I'd learned to carry both. Ahead, the lights of Chinley appeared in the darkness. My community, my home, the place where ancient and modern existed side by side, where coyotes howled in the night and something might howl back, where the rules that protected us were older than the badges we wore. I was Officer Daniel Yazzie, Navajo Nation Police, Cultural Liaison Officer, student of the old ways, cousin to a man who died learning these truths. And I was exactly where I needed to be,